Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Broadland District Council Planning Meeting, Wednesday the 17th of June 2020, our second virtual meeting. Thank you to all our officers to enable these meetings to continue and to progress. Hopefully everything will run smoothly, but please be patient if we should find a few gremlins in the works. It's still very much early days, and we will continue to work to improve the experience for all involved. Our meeting today will be recorded, and today will be the first time that we will be live streaming the meeting. The recording of this meeting will also be available on Broadland District Council website. You should be aware any comments made in this meeting will be recorded indefinitely. Please can I ask everyone in attendance to ensure that when your mic is unmuted, that you should try to keep the background noise to a minimum. Background noise can be very distracting from the discussion and information being relayed throughout the meeting. My name is Councillor Sue Lawn, Chairman of the Planning Committee. I will now ask our committee officer to proceed to a roll call for other members of our Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If I just call out your names in alphabetical order, if you could just confirm if you were in attendance. Councillor Adams.
Here.
Councillor Beadle.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Yep.
Councillor Folger. Councillor Folger.
No.
Just bear with me, Chair. I'm having some problems with unmuting.
I don't think he's actually here, is he?
He's not here.
I think I did notice someone had just
He was
dropped
previously
out.
and then he disappeared off the screen.
So at the moment, Chairman, I'll have to record him as not in attendance.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi Guvanlu.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Lawn.
Present.
Councillor Moncur.
Here.
Councillor Riley.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Here.
And Councillor Fulcher is back.
Yep. Councillor Grattan is not with us, I don't believe. Is she, Chairman?
No.
No.
Councillor Grattan is not here, but I think Mr. Folger is now endeavouring to join us. Mr. Folger, can I confirm that you are here?
Need to unmute.
Mr. Folger, can you confirm you're here?
You need to unmute.
I've unmuted Councillor Folger, but if there's obviously some delays there.
I think that Councillor Fulcher has to unmute himself, maybe.
Perhaps you can just give me your thumbs up, Mr. Folger, that you can hear us okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Officer Matthews, thank you very much. And I would also like to introduce the officers that are present with us today. We have Helen Mellors, Assistant Director of Planning for Broadland and South Norfolk District Council, Tracy Lincoln, Development Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, and Tracy is also our host for this meeting this morning. Nigel Harris, East Area Team Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, and Nigel is our presenting officer today. Dawn Matthews from Democratic Services will take and prepare the minutes of our meetings. Thank you. All members of the committee have received in advance paper copies of the agenda, presentation slides and public written submission for all the applications we will consider today. At various points throughout the meeting, for example, in relation to questions and comments, I will do a roll call member to member in alphabetical order, requesting the committee members' input. And today I'm pleased to confirm that we will have public speaking for this planning meeting. Only members of the public who have registered to speak in accordance with the Council scheme of public speaking will be able to address the committee. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker per parish council. Please be aware that, excuse me, please be aware there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents or photographs at this meeting. The order of our meeting today will be as follows. The planning officer will present the key points for the application to the committee for their consideration. This will be followed by questions to the presenting officer from members of the committee in relation to the presentation. Public speakers will then be invited to address the committee. This again will be followed by questions to the public speakers from members of the committee. I must emphasise these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not for the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is Parish Town Council first, followed by objectors, and finally supporters, i.e. the applicant or the agent. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes for each speaker. This again will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions will be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The committee will then discuss and determine the application with the proposer and seconder for each application. Members will give their vote to the proposal by roll call, and our committee officer will relay the result of the votes to the meeting. Do we have any questions before we proceed? Thank you. We will now move on to our agenda, and at this point for our virtual meeting, I would like to bring items 1, 3 and 4 together. Agenda item number 1 is to receive declarations of interest under procedural rule number 8. Agenda item number 3 is to confirm minutes of the previous meeting, and agenda item number 4, any matters arising therefrom. Members, Officer Matthews shall call your name in alphabetical order. Please advise if you have any declarations of interest, and please confirm if you agree with the minutes of our meeting held on the 20th of May 2020. Thank you, Officer Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Adams.
Yes, non-pecuniary, but I am a dog owner.
And are you happy with the minutes, Mr. Adams?
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle.
Yes and no. Sorry, no and yes.
So no declarations,
No
and
declarations. I
you're
agree
happy
with
with the minutes. Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
No declarations, happy with the minutes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Folger. Are you able to unmute, Councillor Folger?
No items of interest and happy with the minutes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Karimi Guvenliu.
No declarations of interest and happy with the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Apologies, Chairman, we seem to have some problems.
Yeah, no declarations and happy with the minutes, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Lawn.
No declarations and happy with the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Moncur.
No declarations of interest and happy with the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
No declaration of interest and happy with the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No declaration, happy with the minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. That's finished.
Thank you. Thank you, Officer Matthews. And do we have any matters arising from the previous meeting? No, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item number 2, apologies. Officer Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Mr. Clancy and Mr. Kelly as his substitute.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, the schedule of applications. And you will see from the supplementary for the members that application 1, land off Dawson's Lane, Blowfield, has been deferred till the next available meeting. So we will move on with the application number 2, 2019 1598, Sequoia Rise, Witten, Posick. Can I confirm that all the public speakers registered to speak in relation to this application are linked into the meeting? Tracy?
That's correct, Kat. We've got Debbie Sherman acting as agent who's speaking on behalf of that item.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, the presentation will be presented by Officer Harris. The officer will be sharing his screen throughout the presentation. Members will also have this presentation via hard copies. Committee members, please ensure that you do not leave your seat at the time during the presentation, the public speaking or discussion of this application. If you should need to leave for any reason, please give the reason leaving to the host through the chat, and you will need to understand that you could then be in a situation where you're unable to vote on the application under discussion at the time of your absence. Please be advised if a member should lose connection for a period of time, the meeting will be adjourned until the member reconnects. Please note a member will be given a period of 5 minutes to reconnect before the meeting will resume. And if the member has not connected in the timescale allowed, he or she will not have a vote on the application under consideration at the time of losing connection. Members, can I advise you on conclusion of this presentation? I will ask through a roll call if you have any questions in relation to this presentation, and this will be the protocol for each application we will consider today. Could I please request, if you should have any questions or comments after I've asked you in roll call, would you please address these further questions through chat, and our host Tracy will bring it to my attention. We will now proceed to the presentation. Thank you, Officer Harris.
Chairman, so item 2, this is a full application seeking planning permission to redevelop the site, brownfield site, for the erection of 3 detached dwellings. Land at Sequoia Rise, Mill Lane, South Witton, within the parish of Poswick. The application is brought before members today as the recommendation for approval is contrary to the development plan. We can go to the slides now, please, Tracy. So the first slide, just to put the site in context, just right of centre marked with a red star is the application site. That's Mill Lane, Poswick. It sits to the west of the main built-up part of Brundall. You can see to the right-hand side of the slide. Mill Lane runs from Poswick Lane to the south through to the A47. There is pedestrian access and a crossing point over the A47, but there's no vehicular access to the A47 from the north. You have to go back down to the junction with Poswick Lane and Brundall Low Road to travel either to the east or the west. East takes you back to Brundall, to the west takes you along Brundall Low Road to Poswick, and then the Broadland Gate and Poswick interchange. Next slide, please, Tracy. This shows the site in relation to Brundall itself, the nearest settlement in terms of where services, facilities, schooling, etc. is located. So the site itself is remote in terms of accessibility terms to local access to services, but it's not remote in the sense of there are other dwellings in the immediate locality. There are dwellings to the north and south of the application site, and indeed there's about a dozen dwellings located along Mill Lane itself. Can you go to the next slide, please, Tracy? So that's the application site, a closer aerial view of that site. It's predominantly made up of paddock areas and dwellings in large grounds on both sides of Mill Lane. If we can go to the next slide, please, Tracy. That's just to indicate the application site. So you've got the site area outlined in red. Other land owned and controlled by the applicant is outlined in blue. There is a revised plan that's just amended slightly the red and blue line that's referred to in your supplementary schedule, and I'll come on to that in a later slide. But it's a linear plot of land on the west side of Mill Lane, as you can see there, which will take access. There's 2 existing means of access to the south and the north of the application site. Can you go to the next slide, please, Tracy? So first view of the application site, we're at the southern end. You can see neighbouring properties. Sequoia Rise is owned by the applicant. That's a former office building which had a change of use through a prior notification process in 2014. That's a dwelling. To the south of that is a property labelled as a cottage. That's a dwelling that's had a contemporary makeover. It's a 1.5-storey property. You can see that property. It has its curtilage that extends to the west with a bank of ground-mounted solar panels, as you can see there. And then the site itself, at the southern end, you can see there's a lot of outside storage in terms of the use. It's a forestry business, timber yard, etc. There's numerous outbuildings on site used in conjunction with the business. There's a southern access that serves the business and also serves Sequoia Rise. And then if we can go to the next slide, please, Tracy. This is then at the northern end of the site. So again, it's quite an extensive 0.3 of a hectare application site area. We're now at the northern end. There's another means of access in the corner of the application site onto Mill Lane. And then north of that, you've got St Christopher's, another residential property with extensive curtilage that includes stabling and a horse menage. And that's again a 1.5 story property. And then there are further dwellings on the east side and further to the north, as we saw on earlier aerial views. Next slide, please, Tracy. So that's the application site we're looking at. You can make out in the blue land, there's an internal access road that's to serve as a private road that will link all 3 plots, but they both exit to the south and exit to the north through existing access points. And as I say, the revised site location plan we've received just includes the southern access within the red line, because if approved, it will be subject to some improvements under highway conditions and also in relation to visibility displays. So you've got 3 detached plots set within fairly large plots themselves, mirroring to a certain extent the plot sizes to the south and to the north. Next slide, please, Tracy. This is we're looking down Mill Lane in a southerly direction towards the junction with Low Road, Poswick Lane. And in view, you've got the means of access, the southern access. So this serves the building and Sequoia Rise. Behind Sequoia Rise, you can see the cottage labelled, and we will see a closer view of that neighbouring property. Next slide, please. That's the, as I say, the cottage, the top slide, top left, existing residential property. And then we're looking in the bottom right slide across the face of the cottage towards Sequoia Rise that's labelled. And then the application site is to the north of Sequoia Rise. Next slide, please, Tracy. Here we're looking along northwards, along Mill Lane. So you've got the southernmost access labelled there. A little further up Mill Lane, there is another access to the north of the application site. You'll see it's very much characterised by embankments with hedgerows, and that hedgerow and embankment will be retained as part of the application site. And also there is sufficient visibility displays along the highway frontage as recommended by the Highway Authority. Next slide, please, Tracy. So now looking into the site, again, that's the southern access. And then there's a blue line just above centre, which identifies the extent of the application site, which then runs northwards. The land to the south of that will be curtilage, residential curtilage associated with the existing dwelling, Sequoia Rise. Next slide, please. So again, we're looking into the site. These are existing internal features. There are some conifer trees which will be removed. There's a lot of storage associated with the forestry and timber yard use. We can go to the next slide, please. So we've got general views within the site. This is marking the extent of the western boundary where you've got that post and rail fence and the poplar trees. There's a lot of overgrowth within the site itself. Obviously that will be cleared, as will the buildings, to make way if the dwellings are approved. Next slide, please. Again, general views within the site. That's looking northwest, heading towards the northern boundary. Next slide, please, Tracy. Within the site at the northern end, again, you can see the outside storage and where working takes place. And you can just see the label there of St Christopher's. The other side of that vegetated boundary is the neighbour to the north, known as St Christopher's. Next slide, please. Here again, you can see St Christopher's labelled, but it's also labelled and arrowed the northernmost access. As I said, the site has got 2 points of access, north and south, both of which will be retained and improved as part of this proposal. Next slide, please. That's looking into the frontage of St Christopher's, the residential property to the north, again a 1.5 story property, and you can see that vegetated boundary to the left-hand side. And that's the boundary with the application site. And then the next slide, please, Tracy.
Oh, geez, Nigel, we're having some slight technical problems there.
Okay. The next slide will show, it's a field gate, which is the northernmost access into the access into and egress from the application site to the north. So that's existing.
Is that showing, Nigel? Apologies.
Yes.
Yes, it's on my screen. And if we can go, and we'll leave the presentation on this slide, which shows the layout of the proposed 3 dwellings. Just to summarise some key issues in terms of material considerations to have regard to in considering the application. The report indicates the site is not within a settlement limit and does not relate to dwellings which require a countryside location. And with an evidenced 5-year housing land supply, the starting point for determination of the application is that it should be in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. There's a comprehensive assessment in the officer's report, which also has regard to the planning history. And secondly, the enforcement history and under enforcement of the site, all of which are material considerations, as is the now lawful use of the site, as we've referred to. There is conflict with development plan policy in relation to the location of the site, and this was also a determining factor in relation to an appeal decision for residential development, albeit on a greenfield site on the other side of Mill Lane in 2017. That appeal decision is referred to within the report and is also attached as Appendix A on pages 46 to 49 of your agenda. However, in relation to the current application site and the site being outside of the settlement limit, there are considered to be other material considerations that weigh in favour of the balanced recommendation for approval of the dwellings on the site of this forestry timber yard use. It is seen that the removal of this use adjacent to neighbouring dwellings weighs in favour of the recommendation being made as a material consideration, together with the redevelopment of what is a brownfield site, and there being no highway objections given the removal of the commercial use of the site and obviously the traffic associated with that. I've referred to the supplementary schedule. As I say, we've had 2 revised drawings, minor revisions to the red line boundary just to include the southern access and visibility splay. And that doesn't change the recommendation, which remains as one of authority to delegate authority to the Director of Place. Approve the application subject to the completion of the Section 106 agreement with 2 heads of terms, the cessation of the current timber and forestry use and those uses authorised by the 2009 Planning Commission, and also the future use of the land in relation to Sequoia Rise being used for residential purposes, and also subject to the conditions which are set out on page 44 of your agenda. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Harris. Okay, members, we will go to a roll call to see if you have any questions in relation to that presentation. Can I start with Councillor Adams, please? Do you have any questions in relation to the presentation?
Not at this stage, Madam Chairman, but I will be wanting to speak later on.
That's fine, thank you. Councillor Beadle?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fisher? Sorry, you're not unmuted, Councillor Fisher. You are now?
Nothing at this stage, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulcher?
Did you hear?
No, sorry, can you just repeat that? Any questions?
Yes, no comments at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grattan is not here. Councillor Karimi?
No questions at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Moncur?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
No questions at time, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Riley?
No questions, thank you.
And Councillor Ward?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions either. Thank you very much. Okay, this brings us to our public speaking for this application. We don't have any public speakers from the Parish Council, nor do we have any public speakers objecting to this application. However, we do have a public speaker in support of the application, and I would like to invite Debbie Sherman to address the committee, please. Officer Lincoln, can you please unmute Ms. Sherman, please?
Debbie Sherman's unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sherman. You will have 5 minutes to address the committee. Unfortunately, we don't have a clock to show you on the screen, as that would block you out from our members. So the host will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Lovely, thank you. So please could I ask you to introduce yourself to the committee, and you have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you. Good morning, members. My name is Debbie Sherman. I'm from One Planning. I'm the agent for this application. So basically, I wanted to give you a little bit of background to the application. The site was granted planning permission in 2009 for a forestry business, including storage and office. This decision included various conditions about no storage of byproducts from the forestry operation, no use of power tools to saw and chip wood on site. It's clear from what you've seen this morning and from what's been set out in your officer report that the use of the site doesn't accord with that planning permission and has been used continuously on that basis for the last 10 years. And it's been accepted by your officers that it is now lawful and immune from enforcement action. Just to give you a bit of information as to how the business operates currently, there's a number of vehicles that operate from the site, including a long wheelbase transit, tractor, vehicle mounted hoist, and at times a 7.5 ton flatbed lorry. The flatbed lorry is currently off the road, but it could be reintroduced at any time. It just needs its license renewed. So taking into account all those vehicle movements, commercial vehicle movements, as well as customers coming to and from the site to buy wood and other byproducts, the vehicle movements associated with the current business are between 60 and 72 vehicle movements a day. So that's aside from the activities on site, which are sawing, chipping and so on. And I'm aware, and your officer report has set out, that there have been complaints over the years regarding the nature of the business activities, albeit no formal action was taken. So that's really the background of the current activities on site. So this application is looking really to address what can only be described as a non-conforming use in context of its surroundings. It's immediately adjacent to residential properties, including the applicant's own dwelling. And this scheme would enable that commercial use to be removed from the site, those vehicle movements to fall away completely and be replaced by, on average, circa 18 vehicle movements per day, assuming 6 vehicle movements per dwelling, because we're talking about 3 dwellings. So there's a significant reduction in vehicle movements associated with the site. So we're looking at 3 detached dwellings and garages, which, as you can see, have been very sensitively sited within the plot. The site has 2 accesses onto Mill Lane, as you've seen, one in the southeast corner and one in the northeast corner. So that facilitates all vehicles to be able to enter and leave the site in forward gear. The Highways Department has raised no objections. They had some questions which we were able to satisfy in terms of visibility display and explanation of the vehicle movements, and they've raised no objections on that basis, and they've recognised there would be a significant reduction in vehicle movements on site. We are aware that the Parish Council has objected, and it appears principally on the basis of vehicle movements, but you've heard today and you've seen in your officer report that actually there would be a significant reduction. Just to highlight that during the course of the application, the scheme has been amended to actually enlarge the application site and ensure that all remaining outbuildings and commercial elements would cease. You'll see on the land edge blue, there's one building that would remain, and that would be used as an ancillary domestic outbuilding for the existing dwelling that is known as Sequoia Rise. But all other commercial activities would cease, and my client is happy to sign a legal agreement to that effect when the development commences. The result of enlarging the plots, enlarging the site, is again, it gives more generous plots with
1 minute remaining, sorry.
With greater space between dwellings. So overall, the proposal is a logical infill plot. It would result in a significant enhancement to its immediate setting and have a positive impact on its surroundings. It would deliver housing and make the most efficient use of previously developed land. It would result in the cessation of a commercial timber yard and result in opportunities to improve the immediate area. It would be sensitive. It would not cause any adverse impacts on amenity to nearby dwellings. Existing trees and hedgerows would be retained as part of the site. The ecological mitigation plan shows that issues relating to protected species can be accounted for, and it would be both deliverable and developable as set out in the NPPF. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Members, can I just ask if anybody can show by hand at the moment if you have any questions for the public speaker? No? Okay, thank you very much. Debbie, that's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
We will, thank you. We will now go to the discussion of this application. Members, I just need to advise you that you will all be unmuted, and I just need to explain that please don't try to unmute yourselves. At the moment, we're having problems with people, and Tracy isn't able to unmute you if you've tried to do it yourselves. So I can see that Councillor Ward is unmuted, but please, Tracy will unmute you, and then we can then have the discussion. But you will still need to put your request, because we'll take it in the order of people coming forward. So if you could just put something into the chat for everyone to see, just saying is either a question or a comment, and we will start the discussion. So Tracy, can you unmute everyone?
Yeah, in the process of doing that, if members, you can just agree that on your screens. So Chairman, I have Councillor Adams wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not in favour of this development, basically on a number of grounds, and I feel that our policies are being somewhat trashed in this particular case. First, even the officers admit in their report that it does breach several of our policies. Also, of course, it breaches the guidance quite considerably in the National Planning Policy Framework. And I refer to number 9, promoting sustainable transport, 102, where it says transport issues should be considered in the early stages of plan making and development proposals so that opportunities to promote walking, cycling, and public transport use are identified and pursued. Well, it's obvious that this particular site can't meet that particular guidance in the MPPF. Also, 103 says the planning system should actively manage patterns of growth in support of these objectives, that is sustainable transport. Significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable through limiting the need to travel and offering a genuine choice of transport modes. Doesn't meet that particular requirement in my view either. Then we come to 31, considering development proposals, still in the MPPF, Madam Chairman, and it says appropriate opportunities to promote sustainable transport modes can be or have been taken up given the type of development and its location. Well, we know that given its location, that can't be met, and it should also be safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for all users. We know that can't be met. And development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. I would say there is a substantial effect on highway safety, which I will deal with in the planning inspector's report, because he deals with that at some length. It also goes on 1110 on page 32 of the guidance in the MPPF. Within this context, applications should give priority first to pedestrians, but it doesn't do that. Cycle movements doesn't do that, but within the scheme and within neighbouring areas, and second, so far as possible, to facilitate access to high quality public transport with layouts that maximise the catchment area for bus or other public transport use and appropriate facilities that encourage public use, and so on and so on. Now, so apart from, as I said, not meeting the requirements in our own DPD, we also, of course, have a planning inspector's report on a previous site. And The only difference that I can see, having read the planning inspector's report, quite thorough and comprehensive, is that this is a brownfield site rather than a greenfield site. But the fact that it is a brownfield site, in my view, doesn't in any way mitigate exactly what the planning officer or the planning inspector said, because on page 47, paragraph 8, I therefore conclude that future occupiers would not have satisfactory access to local shops and services. And this is the site head opposite, so that I would say still applies from the planning inspector's report. Also 12, for the above reasons, I conclude that the proposal would have an unacceptably adverse effect on highway safety in the vicinity of the appeal site. It would be contrary to TS3, another one of our development management developments. This seeks to prevent development that would give rise to conditions detrimental to highway safety and the convenience of other highway users. So again, he comes out quite strongly in that. And he also says that taking everything into consideration, he concluded that the appeal should be dismissed. So I can't see anything in here apart, as I said, from that coming to a greenfield site to a brownfield site, that we should give planning permission for this. Therefore, on those grounds contained in both in our own policies and in the planning inspector's own report, Chairman, I formally move refusal of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Now, would you like the officers to address your comments now, or are you happy for us to go through the discussion and they collate the questions that might be need addressing? What would your preference be?
I believe, Madam Chairman, let's have an open debate on this and see what other members feel.
Okay.
They may not necessarily, probably won't take my view, but now I think we need to have a discussion on it, then draw it all together at the end. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
So I'm assuming that the officers have noted down the points that you've made, and they will address those when we get to that. Okay, Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I think this is a win-win situation. We have here currently a very scruffy site, noisy operation, must be causing a lot of distress to local residents. And what we're getting instead is 3 lovely houses. And I know there are some reasons that Councillor Adams stated that are relevant, but I think on balance, I think we're getting a very good deal here. And I would move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Riley.
Just 1 second, technology is driving nuts. A second, right? Thank you. Yeah, I would actually second Councillor Adams' move to reject the application. I have to say, Councillor Adams, you must be a mind reader, because I'm sort of looking at this in a very similar way, particularly when you go to the planning inspector's report, and if members have thoroughly read that, if you look at all the sections there, you can see that little has changed really, and it's in the same vicinity, the previous application. It's not exactly the same spot, but it's in the same location in terms of that road access. And then when you go back to the GC1, GC2, DP of the DTPD, again, I'm struggling on this. I'm struggling to see how we could, on balance, how we could actually approve this application. It's just not adding up to me in terms of where we were before on this, where the adjudication was this on before, and where the planning inspector is on this. I understand, of course, there's a material issue, as the officer said, in relation to brownfield sites. However, whether you're on a brownfield site or you're on a greenfield site, the policy that affects rural locations, and then it being lonely place in terms of dwelling, but also in terms of it's not lit by street lights, there's no buses, is still the same. Whether it's brownfield, whether it's green, there's still no buses, it's still not street lit, and there is still an issue, whether it's green or whether it's brown. So I think on balance, in terms of the material side of things and the brownfield site, it doesn't balance up that way for me. I think the other policies supersede, whether it's brownfield or green. You've still got to have those things to connect up to. The brownfield doesn't overweigh it to me, if that's the point the officer was making, of course. So I'm happy to second the Tony's proposal to reject the application, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, so I should have said to Councillor Ward, you're happy for, can I just ask that everybody is happy? We go through the discussion and then the officers come back. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So we'll go to Councillor Fisher, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's interesting to hear what's been said on both sides. And I think when you look at the fact, strictly speaking, it is a brownfield site. I think the actual statement by Mr. Sharman, it's difficult when you're looking at 70 vehicle movements a day, which I think was pushing things a bit. But on the other hand, relating that to 18 vehicle movements a day, there's certainly a benefit there. There's the fact that on page 39, paragraph 5.9, does identify this site as a brownfield site, despite the fact that some of the issues carried out there have been allowed because of the time, which is always a bit tricky to acknowledge. But on the other hand, we're really looking at what is industrial site. It is a brownfield site. I believe it is suitable for development. I think 3 houses there is different to putting 5 on a greenfield site. The number of representations I receive about people saying we should be building on brownfield sites, I think justifies the fact that we can, I believe, build on this particular site as a brownfield site. Yes, it doesn't necessarily tick all the boxes, but on the other hand, I think on balance, reading the report again, even looking at the previous planning inspector's report and the concerns there, it's hardly an isolated plot, because strictly speaking, you could almost walk to Poswick Junction, and the development that's proposed at Poswick Junction, I think satisfies the requirement for servers to be available. So from that point of view, I would be supporting the officer's recommendation. I'm not sure whether we've had a proposal yet. I'm not sure whether Councillor Ward proposed that, in which case I'm happy to second that. If we have to take the proposal objecting to it, then we'll take that first. But generally speaking, I think on balance, this does appear to be a good site for development of just purely three dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle? Sorry, Councillor Beadle, you're muted. I think that you might, I think you might have to unmute yourself. Did you mute yourself? No, we can't hear you.
Councillor Beadle, if you just hold on, I will try to unmute you again.
Are we there?
Yeah. Yes, you are. Thank you.
Right, thank you. The existing planning approvals, are they a general approval for anybody, or is it specifically personal to the current occupier?
Okay, we can ask the officer to address that. Is there any further discussion before we will come back to everybody again, but if I can just ask the officers to address what's been said, please.
I can come back, Chair, if that's acceptable.
Thank you.
I think if we were dealing with a greenfield site, then I wouldn't necessarily disagree with the comments of Councillor Adams, but the reason why we've come forward with a balanced recommendation to approve in this instance is very much given the planning history of the site, the fact that the site has as is acknowledged in the report, a lawful use for commercial use that over a period of time has raised issues in relation to its operations, in relation to neighbouring residential amenity. It's also an existing traffic generator. So there are clear distinctions, and you can very much, I think, defend a situation between this site and, say, the site on the opposite side of the road, which was a greenfield site with no traffic generation in relation to the existing land use, etc. So I think there is a distinction to be made. We do have to be mindful of the planning history. There is a strong material consideration in this respect, as is the reduction in nature and type of traffic movements to and from the site, which has led the Highway Authority to take a different view to when they commented in relation to the 2016 application for the 6 dwellings that the inspector dismissed at appeal. You do have reasons which you can fully justify in this respect in relation to this site and this site only, I would argue, because of the unique nature of the operation on site and the fact that over a period of time that it's now become lawful. And the planning permission is not personal to the applicant, it runs with the land, so the land could be sold on and the existing owner or a new owner could come to us and ask for a lawful development certificate for the outside operations in relation to the timber yard, which on legal advice I believe we would have to grant, and we couldn't impose conditions as to how that site operates. So with that in mind, and to say that the clear distinctions between this site and the site on the opposite side of the road, we feel that there are material benefits that can weigh in favour of allowing this development. Yes, you will have policies that will pull in different directions, and that's why the application is before you today, because it is finally about balance, but we feel that that balance is in favour of allowing a more acceptable land use in the form of residential use. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, if you'd like to address.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Just Councillor Adams was quite correct in that the connectivity is an issue potentially relating to the site as per comparable with the appeal site. What isn't comparable is the reason for refusal he cited for highway safety, because there was an issue with about the visibility on the appeal site that the Highway Authority did not agree with, nor did the inspector, but there is not a highway objection on highway safety for this site, given what's said in the report and the fact there's an existing access and commercial activity from the site. So that's the difference in that. But yes, I quite agree that the connectivity does not meet the required policy requirement, but as Nigel has outlined, there are other material considerations unique to this site and the impact of the commercial activity on the adjacent residential properties with no restrictions, and thus why we would go contrary to policy in this instance as outlined in your report.
Okay, thank you. And I would just like to say that I feel that this is an acceptable application. The site is a mess. I agree with Councillor Ward that it is something that should be tidied up, and this is a perfect way of doing it. 3 houses gives accommodation that is perfectly acceptable. It's not an overfill on this site. It in relation to the highways aren't objecting to this application. It is an extreme difference in the traffic that will go through. For the residents that are living there at the moment, it can only be beneficial. Each application is taken on its own merit. I do appreciate, as the officers and councillors have said, there was an appeal and the appeal was refused, but that was on for different reasons. So I don't see that we can compare those sites, and in my opinion it would be perfectly acceptable for us to, as a committee, to pass this application. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before we should go to the vote? But I will just do a roll call with everyone just to make sure that everybody is happy that we've discussed this as much as is necessary. And so if you have any further questions, could I have a show of hands, please, before we... No, nobody has.
Councillor Adams and Councillor Riley.
Yeah, just to come back to basically on some of the points of Madam Chairman that have been made. And I thank Helen for being frank and open about the fact that doesn't meet several of our policies. And I think, with the greatest of respect, that the two sites are opposite one another. And what the planning inspector actually concluded was, and this is for John Fisher, who doesn't apparently realise what the planning inspector said was, and therefore concludes that future occupiers would not all have satisfactory access to local shops services. And that is one of our key policies when it comes to determining planning applications. And so therefore, Chairman, I have no hesitation in, as I said, that saying that this breaches so many planning policies. I still don't feel personally that the fact that the brownfield site and other considerations anyway override most of our main policies and the policy guidance contained in the MPPF. Therefore, Madam Chairman, I still maintain that it should be refused on policy grounds. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's similar points here, actually. We've got, when you look at the planning inspector's report, and I agree with Helen totally, and if you remember my contribution, I never mentioned the highways because I would say there's a clear difference there. And just in terms of the, this is the point I was making, that issue in terms of our policy, where it's a brownfield site, where it's a greenfield site, again, this is in terms of Councillor Fisher's point, makes no difference. You've still got the issue of the location and the connectivity in terms of that. There's no bus routes, etc. And there's also environmental concerns around that, as you know, in terms of the environment. So you're not supposed to actually encourage isolated rural areas that are not connected up in that situation. So I think in terms of environmental policy, planning policies around this as well, it needs to be taken into consideration. It's a serious one. Now, where I disagree with the Chair's point as well is that when the Chair says that, says that the planning inspector's reasons are different to the reasoning given now, they are in terms of the highways point, which is what Helen made, but they're not in terms of the connectivity through in terms of buses, etc. That still remains. That was in the original inspector's report, and it still remains now. That's not changed. So that it is different in that regard, Chair, but not in that part. So just a slight disagreement on that, and I agree with what Helen said. So again, the policy is the policy, whether it's greenfield or whether it's brown, you still don't have buses there, you've still got the distance, and that doesn't alter it. However, I do understand Nigel's point about it being close, but on balance, I'm this way, Nigel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nigel, can I just ask, do you have any clarification if we're talking about isolation? Since the appeal, and again, this is an individual application, so I appreciate that the appeal is there for our consideration, but this is that was 6 houses, this was 3 houses, that was greenfield, that was brown. Could just confirm how many houses, excuse me, off the top of your head, have been built in that area since that appeal? I know that there's been a small development in Poswick, which is just a mile down the road.
Yes, I mean the through your chair, the site you're referring to in Poswick is obviously has a close relationship with the outer edge of Thorpe St Andrew and its relationship with Broadland Gate and Broadland Business Park. In terms of the site location itself and Mill Lane, there haven't been any recent applications for housing which have been approved. The last one was the one which was referred to in the inspector's appeal in 2017. So they're all established dwellings. But again, the key point here, and refer to issues as environment, etc. This is finely balanced, and yes, we accept that the location in terms of services, access to services and facilities is not ideal. There is actually a public footpath that can be walked, but obviously that's not something that's probably going to be used at night time because it's unlit. People could walk in the road itself, eastwards, back on Poswick Road or Poswick Lane back towards at the Brundle where you've got the rail station, community allotments, etc. In terms of that separation, yes, it's poorly connected in terms of access for the facilities, as it is for the existing 12 dwellings. But key here for us is an acknowledgement of the impact on the local environment in terms of the on-site activities and the impact that has off-site in terms of the amenity of other neighbouring users, and also the mitigation that we would get in terms of that change in land use, and also on highway grounds as well. So it's not the normal type of application that you would see, but it's one that obviously has these mixed issues, but we do consider that there are overriding benefits in terms of allowing the use of this site change to more acceptable use. It does generate 3 extra dwellings. It will involve construction, etc., in terms of the local economy, and 3 additional properties will be contributing to the local economy as well. So on balance, as I say, we consider that this is one that you can accept and that it wouldn't set a precedent for other locations.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Fisher? Councillor Fisher, did you have something you wanted to say?
To come back with a statement on the connectivity. You've got, if you, sorry, yes. I am, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah, just regarding the connectivity and the indication that there's an isolated site. There's just been a new bus shelter erected at the corner of Posick. So that's easily within walking distance of here. You've got a cycle from the site to Posick Junction where there are plenty of services. Going the other way, you're not very far from Brundle. So I really can't see where the issue is regarding connectivity to services. So, you know, by my reckoning, it is not an isolated site. There are services, there's a train station, there's buses go along Posick Lane. There may not be buses go past the house, but I mean, I think half of Broadland, there's not buses go past the house. And when you're looking at street lamps, I think half of Broadland don't have street lamps. So I really don't see those issues as being relevant whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi?
Yeah, I'm slightly torn on this. I can see the benefits of a brownfield site being developed, but in the officer's report from 5.5 to 5.7, you say it's outside the defined settlement limits. You've got the housing supply 5.989 years. It says Posick is not being identified as a settlement area. It's poorly connected by services and not considered a suitable location. So I can't see why the officer is recommending this for approval when in their own policy or on their own documents they're stating this.
Okay, thank you. We can ask Helen to address that, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it clearly is a balanced decision, but the harms of this existing use on this site are there, and that's why we are recommending approval, because to remove those harms, which is a commercial activity with unrestricted use of the outside space, does have a detrimental impact on the immunity of the vicinity, and also has a lot of heavy vehicles and traffic movements already generating from that site. So we acknowledge that it's contrary to policy, but where there are other material considerations to grant consent, and that is within the legislation, you can go contrary to policy. So we are giving significant weight to the fact that the existing use of the site is causing an impact in the locality, and therefore recommending approval. And also, unlike the other appeal, there is an access that can be achieved in highway safety grounds. So you are quite able to, in planning terms, to grant consent contrary to planning policy where other material considerations indicate there is a reason to do so. You have a number of those reasons to do so, as detailed in your report, to go for a recommendation of approval in this instance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, I believe you have a question for the officers. Sorry, we've got you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is for Nigel. In your closing comments, Nigel, you said, you know, that if it was accepted, it would be planning permission for the whole site, and it could be sold on. And if what my query is the Sequoia existing business, which at the moment the applicant has said he would cease to do, would say if he sold it on, would that Sequoia wood business still be enacted, which would be detrimental to the houses next to it if it was allowed to go through?
Quick answer is no, it wouldn't. If you look at, if I can refer you to the recommendation and the heads of terms for the legal agreement on page 44, Sequoia Rise itself is a residential dwelling, and you heard from the speaker that there's one building from the existing use that will be retained within the curtilage of Sequoia Rise. And we're seeking through the legal agreement so that all remaining space is used for residential purposes only. So on signing of that legal agreement and implementation of the planning permission for residential development, the lawful use on site would then, the commercial use and activity would then cease, and a reuse of that would require planning permission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moncur?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's interesting to listen to the chair. I'm finding this is a tough one. 72 movements a day, I find that hard to believe. And for the public speaker to come in and to say the non-conforming to conditions, that doesn't ransom us as a committee to pass this in any way. I'm still on the fence. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any further questions? Okay, well, I'm just going to do that roll call, as I said, just to confirm everybody is happy that we've had a frank discussion in relation to this. So can I please start with Councillor Adams? Do you have any further questions, and are you happy to go to the vote?
Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle? Sorry, you're muted. Okay.
I'm happy to support the officers, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Fisher, we're just checking that you think that we've had a frank discussion and you're happy to go to the vote. I can't hear you, but you're not muted.
100%.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Fulcher?
As it's now a brownfield site and represents an improvement, I'm happy with the discussion and will support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi, just to confirm that you're happy to go to the vote.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Thank you. And Councillor Moncur?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Yes, Chair, and I'm responding exactly the way you said. I'm happy to go to the vote without making further comments.
Thank you. And Councillor Kelly?
No further comments, Madam Chair. Happy to go for the vote.
And Councillor Ward?
Happy to go to the vote.
Okay, Officer Matthews, can I ask you to do a roll call in relation to the vote on this application, please? Oh, sorry, Helen, did you want to just say something?
I'm sure Dawn might point out, but I think we did have I'll let Dawn point that out because I think we've had someone move a
apologies.
And it was seconded.
Can I just clarify where I believe we are, Chairman? We have a proposal from Mr. Adams, seconded by Mr. Riley, that the application be refused. So I think that's the vote you need to take first.
That's
and depending on the outcome of that vote, you then have a second proposal that the officer's recommendations be supported, which again has been seconded. Are you okay with that, Helen?
Thank you.
Yeah, we just have to make sure we give clearly why we are recommending refusal. And I'm quite happy to just sum up before you do that Councillor Adams did give a valid reason to move his refusal, and that was based on notwithstanding, I think I can sum up by saying, notwithstanding the benefits of redeveloping this site, the lack of connectivity to the site, to local services is the reason he's putting forward, just so you know what that is.
Thank you. Okay.
Plus what the planning inspector said about there wouldn't be a problem, or there will be a problem with residents actually connecting to the village.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Officer Matthews.
Thank you. So just to clarify again, as I call each member's name out in turn, we're voting on the proposal from Mr. Adams, seconded by Mr. Riley, that the proposal be the application be refused. So, Mr. Adams, for or against?
For.
Mr. Beadle?
Against.
Mr. Fisher,
Against.
Mr. Folger,
Against.
sorry, Councillor Carini,
Against.
Councillor Kelly,
For.
Councillor Lawn,
Against.
Councillor Moncur,
Against.
Councillor Riley,
For.
and Councillor Ward.
Against.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just count those up for you.
Thank you.
Chairman, that's 3 members voting for the recommendation and 7 against, so that proposal to refuse is lost.
Thank you.
So you may now wish to move to the vote, or the proposal from Mr. Ward, that was to support the officer's recommendation, seconded by Mr. Fisher. So if I could again do a roll call. Mr. Adams?
Against.
Mr. Beadle?
For.
Mr. Fisher? Mr. Folger?
For.
Sorry, Councillor Carini Guvenlu.
For.
Councillor Kelly?
Against.
Councillor Lawn?
For.
Councillor Moncur?
For.
Councillor Riley?
Against.
And Councillor Ward?
For.
1, 2, 3. Sorry, Chairman, just couldn't find my numbers bouncing up. But that's 7 members voting for, 3 against, so that proposal is carried.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings the application to a close. We will have a 5-minute comfort break. Can I please ask that you return to your seats? If you can unmute, Tracy will mute everybody, I'm hoping. And if you can return to your seats by 10:43, that would be really good. No? 41, 42? If you could be back in 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Welcome back. I think that we are just waiting for Councillor Riley to rejoin us. Tracy, do you think that Councillor Riley has lost connection?
See if he's in the room. Yeah, we don't have him on the connection.
We will have to give him a few minutes to reconnect, and then if not, we will have to begin.
Councillor, yeah, sorry, I was just checking members. That's fine.
We will have to give, our 5-minute break has just finished now. We will have to give Councillor Riley 5 minutes to connect before we begin. Councillor Adams, we haven't got Councillor Adams either.
I think Mr. Adams may be with us, but just not got his video on at the moment, Chairman.
Okay.
So he's still connected, yeah.
Still there, thank you. Two more minutes. Sorry to keep you waiting. We just have 2 more minutes. One more minute. Can I just ask why we're waiting for Councillor Riley, and I think that we are going to have to go without him. Can I just check that Emma Griffiths, the public speaker for the next application, you're there? That's lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Okay, I'm afraid we will have to carry on without Councillor Riley, and I'm very sorry that he hasn't been able to connect. So we will move on to the next application.
Can I just do a quick roll call, Chairman, just to make sure?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Adams?
Here.
Councillor Beadle?
Here.
Councillor Fisher?
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Folger? Councillor Folger, can you confirm?
I think Councillor.
Here.
Yep, thank you.
Here.
Councillor Karimi Givenloo?
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Present.
Councillor Lawn?
Present.
Councillor Moncur?
Here.
Councillor Riley, we still haven't heard from him now, so we'll assume he's no longer with us. And Councillor Ward?
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to our application number 3 on this agenda, and it's 2020-0212, 5 Alston Road, Helsden. And I've confirmed that we have got our public speaker in place, so that's good. Officer Harris, the presentation, please.
Chairman, the application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of an industrial unit to use as a swimming pool for dogs, and if necessary, the owners can swim as well, I understand. The application is brought before members for determination as the application to approve is contrary to your development plan policy. If we can go to the next slide, please, Tracy. That's the application site. So we're at the junction on the outer ring road. Members should be familiar with the, I'll refer to it as the Asda junction with Sweetbriar Road. You've got the Helsden Park Road Industrial Estate to the left-hand side, to the west. That's a strategic employment site where policies seek to restrict uses to Class B uses for light industrial, general industrial, storage and warehousing, etc. And the application site is well into the estate, located off Alston Road. There is a driveway off that leads to several industrial units, all based around a driveway. Next slide, please, Tracy. Again, you see that's the application site. It's the end one of a number of units that's accessed direct off Alston Road with their own private drive and forecourts. Next slide, please. Aerial view, that's the application site. As you see there, next slide, please. That's the existing floor plan of the unit. It simply has a roller shutter door, personal door and windows to the front elevation out towards the parking area at the front, and an emergency access door to the rear. Bring it to the next slide, please. This is the proposed internal layout. If we go to the next slide, because we've got a larger, that's the proposed ground floor entrance as you come in. There's no physical alterations required to the exterior of the building, but internally they're looking to create a sort of reception office, disabled WC and shower. And then there will be a ramp up, as you see at the top of that screen. The pool itself is a metal pool which will go in at ground level, but there'll be a ramped deck up to it, if we can go to the next slide, so that there will be level access and a walkway all around on 3 sides, so that the pool is then at a lower level, I would imagine about 1 metre deep. And that's literally the alterations internally to fit out the building for that proposed use. We carry on with the slides, please. So the application site, that's Alston Road, and then there's a road off that, as you can see the arrow there. There's effectively a cul-de-sac of units off a private road. Next slide, please. So looking into, it's got a gated entrance for security. So we can go in onto the next slide, please. That's looking at typical elevations. So all of the units have parking in front of them. We go to the next slide, please. That's the frontage of the unit, has its own car parking dedicated to the site frontage. So externally, there'll be no physical changes other than possibly some advertising. Next slide, please. And the next slide. And we'll leave the presentation on that slide. Need to report, and key to this, that no objections have been raised in relation to the consultations carried out for the application. Indeed, the Parish Council, Hillsden Parish Council, and the Economic Development Officer fully support the proposal. The policy conflict is in relation to the wider industrial estate. It's an employment side of strategic importance that, as I said earlier, seeks to retain Class B uses, so primarily industry for light industry, general industrial, storage, warehousing, etc. Whilst the proposal will give rise to the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs, the proposal is for Class D2 assembly and leisure use, which is not in accordance with your current planning policies. However, as set out in the assessment of the report, this relates to a vacant unit. It's proved difficult to let. The proposal causes no harm, and it's considered to be an effective use of an underused building and very much supported by Section 11 of the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, in terms of making effective and efficient use of land. So the recommendation is for one of approval as set out on page 57 of your agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, we will do a roll call to ask if you have any questions in relation to the presentation. Councillor Adams?
None, Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle?
Sorry, Chair. No, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulcher?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi?
Just one on the plans. I noticed there's a disabled toilet in there and a ramp going up to the pool, but is the actual main entrance disabled access? Can the officer tell me that?
Yes.
I will probably defer that question to the speaker if that's something that she can pick up, but I would imagine that with a roller shutter door to the frontage and the entrance, that there probably is a level threshold, but perhaps that could be clarified by the speaker.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Moncur?
Yeah, just a quick question, Nigel. On the recommendations and the conditions, we've got condition 1 TL01 for a year time limit. Do we need that if we've got condition 4, which is going to revert back to employment use once if this lady's business moves on?
We know that, yes, we would normally impose a condition that their use has to commence within a certain time period. I take the point that with condition 4, but I'm comfortable with the conditions as drafted.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Riley no longer with us, and Councillor Ward?
No, no questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That moves us on to our public speaking. We don't have any representation from the Parish Council, nor do we have any members of the public who would like to voice their objection. We have, however, a member of the public in support of the application today, Miss Emma Griffiths. And Officer Lincoln, can you please unmute Miss Griffiths, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, members. My name is Emma Griffiths. I work for Browning.
Sorry, Emma, can I just confirm something with you, please?
Yeah.
That you will have 5 minutes from now. We don't have a clock that we can put up on the screen because that will block you off from our members. So the host will let you know when you have a minute of your time remaining. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so now you have 5 minutes. If you could introduce yourself, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. So as I said, my name's Emma. I work for Browning Co and I am agent representing the applicants for this application. As the case officer has set out, this proposal seeks the change of use of the unit from B1 to D2 to allow for use as a swimming pool for dogs. The work that will be undertaken would be internal and temporary in nature and allow for the unit to revert to a B1 use should the proposed use cease. Swimming for dogs has proven to have a number of benefits for their health and mobility. However, there is a risk associated with swimming in water courses from strong tides, algae, and low temperatures. Such activities can also disturb and have a detrimental impact upon flora and fauna. Dog-friendly swimming pools are becoming an increasingly popular alternative, providing a safe and controlled environment. However, there are few facilities in the area. Whilst the proposal would result in the loss of an employment unit within a designated employment area, it would allow for a vacant unit to be brought back into use. The proposal by the applicants represents the only substantial interest in the unit since it was placed on the market in November 2018. Whilst this isn't an employment use per se, the proposal would create two full-time jobs and result in additional support for the local economy, harnessing some of the significant spending power of dog owners. Wider economic benefits could be garnered through association of the proposed business with other businesses in the area, including kennels and holiday rentals. Indeed, the applicants have already had a number of inquiries from local businesses seeking to affiliate with them, and I've heard significant interest on social media platforms and through local and national publications, which has resulted in inquiries from visitors nationwide. Importantly, the proposals would meet the needs of a small startup business which has grant funding from Santander through the UEA and is being assisted by Broadland Business Support. The applicant's significant market research has demonstrated support and demand for the proposals and has informed the location for the business. The proposed use is compatible with those surrounding. There's sufficient parking to accommodate users. However, the sustainable location and connectivity of the site by footpaths and bus reduces the need to travel to the site via private vehicles. The proposal would bring environmental benefits through the provision of an alternative to dog walking, which could help to alleviate some pressure on designated and non-designated sites and species shown to arise from dogs and on local water courses. Whilst local planning policies seek to protect designated employment areas, so they too state that the needs of small and start-up businesses should in particular be catered for. The proposals would support such a business, which has generated a significant level of interest from the local community, bring a vacant unit back into use, and provide support for the local economy, which at times such as these seems more important than ever. For these reasons, I hope that members will approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask members if you could just raise your hands if you have any questions for the public speaker? I believe that Councillor Munkar has a question. That was for the last one. Okay, apologies.
Yeah,
okay, Councillor Karimi, did you want to just address the question that you had for the officer?
Yeah, please. Could you just confirm that the access to the building is disabled friendly for wheelchairs, please?
It is. It's level access in through the personal door.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for your time. It's really very much appreciated. And that now brings our public discussion to a close. We will now, members, go into discussion in relation to this application. As previously, you will remain unmuted as a committee. Please, can I ask if you have a comment or question of the officers, please register your request to do so in the chat, and we will come to you in turn. After this discussion, the committee will then determine the application with proposer and seconder for the application. After appropriate discussion, I will roll call to confirm your agreement, and there are no further comments. Should move on. We'll move on to the vote. Okay, does anybody have anything that they'd like to bring to discussion in relation to this application? It all seems fairly straightforward to me, but nobody wishes to. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, Chairman, actually I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. I think personally we'd be fucking mad if we turned this one down.
I second that.
Excellent. Okay, so if we have no further discussion, I think it is all fairly straightforward. So I'm happy that we should go to a vote, but would you like me to do a roll call in relation to that, or shall we just go to the vote? Show of hands.
Just go for the vote.
Go for the vote.
Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. I will hand you over to Councillor Matthews, who...
Officer Matthews.
Oh, sorry, Officer Matthews, apologies, councillors and officers. Officer Matthews, who did we have a seconder for that?
Yes,
Yes.
we had several.
Yes, we did. Okay,
Yeah,
yes, of course we did. Okay, apologies, Officer off you go.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, Councillor Adams, for or against? Councillor Beadle?
For.
Councillor Fisher? Councillor Fisher? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Councillor Folger?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Creamy Guvanloo?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lawn?
For.
Councillor Moncur?
For.
Councillor Riley is not with us. And Councillor Ward?
For.
Chairman, that's unanimous with 9 members voting in favour.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma, for your time. It's very much appreciated. Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 6. We don't have any appeals for today, so that now brings our committee to a close. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. If I could just ask Tracy, if you could please stop live streaming and recording, and if the members could just hang on just for a few seconds after we have stopped recording and the